Hi guys, welcome back. Today we'll be taking a look at the Hong Kong market as well as some of its stocks. Before we begin, we'll take a second to give the video a like and subscribe as you greatly help out the channel. Without further ado, let's first start off with the Hang Seng Index. So the Hang Seng Index had an impressive run this week, and even on the Friday, there was some profit taking, but we still managed to have a pretty good and decent close. Looking at its resistance, after we managed to clear 50% at 21643, we were actually heading towards this 22447. Unfortunately, there was not enough power, and we only hit the week high at 22142. So the next key resistance to watch and the key resistance to clear is 22447. We have to clear this resistance to continue to become bullish. If not, we will remain bearish. And if we can clear it, then we're looking towards this 23K psychological resistance, and thereafter test 23592. Looking at the supports on the way down, we are looking at 21508, 21K psychological support, and 20660. Clearly, you can see that on the way down, the cloud is acting as a support, while on the way up, the cloud acts as a resistance, and the cloud is acting as a support currently. This blue conversion line is also acting as a temporary support for today at 21513. So let's move on to the Hang Seng Tech Index. So the Hang Seng Tech Index seems to be slightly stronger. In fact, you can see that it is already testing its 61.8% at 4862.07. Unfortunately, we did not close above it today, and we hit a high of 4903.9 just yesterday. Looking at its next resistance would be the 5K psychological resistance, and thereafter testing 5242.28. If you're looking at the supports, we'll be looking at 4658, 4465, and 4329, which is also this red baseline here at 4329. And ideally, on the way down, the cloud should act as a good support for the Hang Seng Tech Index. Let's move on to some of its constituents. So firstly, we're talking about Tencent. So as you can see, Tencent, after clearing this 50% at 392, we did not actually sustain above 400 for very long. Yesterday, we hit a day high of 406.8, and we started to pull back down. So the next resistance to watch will be 415, 447.2, and 488, which is still quite far away. Looking at the supports, we'll be looking at 389, 375, and 366. This blue conversion line is currently at 375, while this red baseline is currently at 368. So 368 is essentially the last support for Tencent holdings. Let's move on to Alibaba. So 9988. Once again, we had an impressive run this week, up almost over 20%, if I'm not wrong. So looking at its resistance, we managed to cross above this 61.8% at 110. So we are likely to look to test this recent high of 119 and even a potential resistance at 121.3. If we are successful to break out above these two resistance, then we're likely to be looking at 135.0, which is a potential short-term target for Alibaba. Let's take a look at some of its supports on the way down. We are looking at 108.5, 102.3, and $98 as well. You can clearly see that this blue conversion line is at 103.7, or this red baseline is at $98. So do bear in mind that just below the $100 psychological support, there may be some stop hunting at around 98 or 99, where these market makers would like to flush out some retail investors. So let's move on to Meituan. So Meituan had a very impressive run. In fact, it is one of my favorite stocks. From its recent low of 103.6 and its recent high of 242, you can see that we managed to even clear this 61.8% and even test this 78.6% at 212.6. We hit a day high of 211.6 just yesterday, about $1 shy of this resistance, and we started to pull back down. So our support to watch will be 194.2, 180.4. These two will be a critical and strong resistance for Meituan. Looking at this blue conversion line, we're looking at 190 psychological support, and also looking at 177.8 as a temporary support for Meituan. Let's move on to NetEase, 9999. So NetEase, very similar to Meituan. You can clearly see that we are already towards this 8.6%, and we actually closed the week at the very peak for NetEase. So this is quite an impressive closing. It shows that buyers are around. So if we actually manage to successfully break above this resistance, then we're looking at the $180 psychological resistance before testing the high of 188.9. On the way down, its supports we'll be looking at is 164.5. You can see that just today, this blue conversion line is at 165, and it was being tested somewhere near the day low. If you were to pull back down slightly, then we're looking at 157.8, and also this 153.2 coincides with this red baseline as a support level. Let's move on to NIO. So NIO also, just this week, it had quite a good run. Unfortunately, you can see that this Friday closing candle wasn't very impressive. and we closed with a very high shadow above. Looking at this recent low of 100.8 to a recent high of 196, we are looking towards this 61.8%, which most of the stocks did not actually clear as well, which is this 159.6. So we actually went above it, but we closed the week below it. Hit a high of 166.5 on the Wednesday. So the next resistance to watch would be this 175.6 and also 196.0. If you were to start pulling back down, you can see that 152.4 is our first support before looking at 141 and 133.7. So you can see that this blue conversion line is acting as a support just today at 148.4, while this red baseline is also our next support at 133.7. Let's move on to JD.com or 9618. So JD seems to be lagging behind slightly. We managed to clear above this 249.0. In fact, we closed the week at 250, just above it. So that is quite a promising sign. Next resistance to watch would be 265.4 and 286.0. If we start pulling back down, we're looking at 246.4, 234.2, and 225.6. So this red baseline is at 225, while this blue conversion line we acted as a support today will be at 237.7. Let's move on to Baidu. So Baidu, after it is double bottom, we had a very good rally thereafter. There was this double bottom here, and then we had a good rally all the way up to 8.6% at 151.3. Even though we had a strong gap down today, there was a very impressive closing. So this shows that buyers are around. Look at the high volume that we are looking at for Baidu. So the resistance to watch will be this 151.3 before retesting 165.6. If we do start pulling back down, we're looking at 142, 134, and 128. Rate baseline is at 128, or this blue conversion line is at 144. Let's move on to AIA. So AIA is also pretty impressive, but this Friday we had a red candle closing, even though we closed near the peak. So let's look at some of the resistance. 61.8%, 83.05. We can't seem to clear above it on 2 consecutive days, and we hit a high of 83.55. So the next resistance to watch will be 86.55 before retesting $91. So looking at the supports, we can see that this first support we are looking is at this $81, 79, and 77.6. This coincides with this red baseline at 77.6, and this blue conversion line is at 81.3. Let's move on to PingAn. So PingAn, honestly, something is wrong. We can't seem to punch up further, so it seems that there is perhaps some bad news coming up for PingAn. So you can see that 61.8% at 50.20 was being tested before we started to come back down. So currently now this red baseline is acting as a very strong resistance, and so long as we cannot punch up, that would not be a good sign for PingAn. If we were to start punching up, then this blue conversion line has to cut above this red baseline. And the resistance to watch will be 50.20 and 51.35 and 52.85. So all these will be a very strong resistance because there is also a tick cloud resistance here for PingAn, or 2318. Lastly, let's take a look at Xiaomi Corporation. So Xiaomi Corporation, not surprising, we are actually facing some struggles here because it is the cloud resistance, and it's having some cloud resistance all the way until about 13.50, still about $1.50 to go. So you can see that 50% here at 12.88 acted as a very strong resistance. You hit a day high of 12.90 just yesterday on a Thursday. So the next resistance and key resistance to watch will be this 13.50. Of course, there's also the $13 psychological resistance to clear, and 13.50 will be our next critical resistance before testing 14.36 and 15.48. If you were to start pulling back down, then we're looking at 11.90, 11.60, and 11.30. You can see that this red conversion line, blue conversion line, and red baseline is at 12.26 and 11.60 respectively. So hopefully we can continue to trend up and break above this cloud resistance next week. So on the whole, the Hang Seng Index is looking good for now, and it has also created an impressive run just this week. But the question is whether or not we are able to break out above this recent high of 61.8% for the Hang Seng Index and its respective stocks. If we can continue to trend higher and start creating higher highs and even higher lows, that would be a good situation for the Hang Seng Index as well as some of its respective stocks. So we shall see how it performs next week, and we can only hope for the best. So if there's any changes, I'll give you guys an update. Thanks for stopping by. Till we meet again, appreciate the manipulation.